Greenberg's live global travel update is presented to you by Colette. Discover the world. Guided travel since 1918.
And a very early good morning to you on this first Wednesday of June 2026. Peter Greenberg here with our global update from the Waikiki area of Honolulu. In fact, the Outrigger Reef Waikiki Beach Hotel here at about 6 o'clock in the morning. Happy to speak to you. Lots of things to talk about. We're over here broadcasting one of my shows, but in the meantime, updating you on all the events worldwide. Lots of stuff to talk about. Let's start with some numbers here, some dollar numbers. Last week we talked about domestic airfares being up between 20 and 24%, international airfares up over 40%. But then on specific routes in the U.S., remember that 20 to 24% figure is just an average, but on specific routes, the numbers are crazy. And I focus on the transcon airfares, let's say from San Francisco to New York, Los Angeles to New York. In March, a round trip ticket from LA to New York was about $360, so similar fare from San Francisco to New York. We priced it out this week as high as $933 from Los Angeles, over $1,000 from San Francisco. That's untenable. It's ridiculous. Now, if you wanted to get a little bit lower fare, you could do it on a red-eye, one-stop connector flight on Frontier for about $500 to $600, still way above, almost double what it was just 4 months ago. So be advised that those numbers are not coming down. They're only increasing. Those tickets that we talked about last week, those ridiculously high fares like New York to Johannesburg, guess what? Still $17,000. Sustainable? No. Now, if you flew over Memorial Day weekend, you saw what I saw. Every plane was full. Wait a minute. If the fares are so high, how's everybody flying? Well, the answer for that, in a very easy explanation, is that an overwhelming number of the people who flew over Memorial Day weekend made their reservations 4 months ago. So they weren't paying that surcharge. They weren't paying the premium. But there's another reason why the planes are full. It's the triage on the airline schedules based on the cost of fuel and how many people are really flying. So the airlines are canceling still thousands of flights, not just for 1 or 2 flights, not just for the month. They're taking those flights off the schedule for the rest of the year. In the month of May alone, we're talking 13,000 flights were canceled, and that number is increasing. So when you're cutting your capacity, you're cutting your frequency, your flights are inevitably going to be full, and then the law of supply and demand kicks in, and even those flights, then the rates go up. It's a lose-lose situation for us. And one other thing that brings into mind, and that is if the planes are all full, that means more people might be getting bumped from flights because the airlines may be overbooking them. Now, there's a difference between an overbooked flight where they ask for volunteers and something called IDB, involuntary denied boarding. Interesting statistic here. Now, we've all been on flights, or even at the gates, where they know they've got an oversale situation and they ask for volunteers to give up their seat. People who already had a bona fide seat and a bona fide boarding pass and a bona fide reservation in return for a cash value voucher and a promise to put them on a later flight. We've all done it. Some of us may have already done it ourselves. And there's usually an auction if nobody takes the first bid. So that $300 voucher can go to $600, can go to $1,200, et cetera. And gate agents at airlines are actually authorized these days to up to $10,000 if they have to go that high to get people to give up their seats. But what if nobody gives up their seats or not enough people give up their seats? Then we get into the IDB, the involuntary denied boarding situation, where they arbitrarily throw you off the plane. They pay you some compensation, but guess what? You're not taking that flight. So how many are there in the U.S.? Well, let's look at 2025. Which airline led all other airlines in the most number of involuntary denied boarding passengers? By a long shot, and by a big margin, it was American Airlines. They did involuntary denied boardings of more than 14,000 passengers. I'll get back to that in a second. But then by comparison, what did other airlines do? United, guess what? They only denied boarding to 305 passengers the entire year. Oh, I take that back. It was 309 passengers, okay? What about Southwest Airlines? 226 passengers. That was it. And Delta, a big fat zero. So what does that tell you about corporate policy at these airlines? American feels it's okay to just overwhelmingly deny boarding and pay minimal compensation. Whereas the other airlines, it's a policy not to even oversell the plane to begin with. So as we get into the summer months and airlines booking all these flights or overbooking all these flights, American doesn't look very good. So book accordingly. Speaking of flights, this Sunday marks the inaugural flight of nonstop service between New York and Malta, one of my favorite destinations. In fact, you can see our show Hidden Malta on Amazon, Apple TV, PBS, and YouTube. But for the first time ever, nonstop service between the United States and Malta from JFK on Delta. They'll go 3 times a week. It's seasonal, but they start this Sunday. That's a good sign. Anytime you go nonstop without having to connect through London, count me in. Okay, some other numbers to discuss with you, and these numbers are sort of disturbing because they paint the picture that should have been painted a long time ago. We all talked about Spirit, the demise of Spirit, going out of business, ceasing to operate. They literally ran out of cash. But in the days and weeks before that, they were asking the U.S. government at the end of the day for a bailout of about $550 million to be able to keep flying. I think it was $500 million. The JetBlue was $550. I'll get to that in a second. And at the end, those talks fell apart because the United States was going to do it, but they wanted first position in getting paid back. And the other creditors involved in the ongoing bankruptcy at that point of Spirit said no deal. And Spirit literally ran out of money and went out of business. It stopped service. Well, the latest figures are in. For the last month of Spirit's operation, the airline managed to lose over $330 million in 1 month. So what does that tell you? A $500 million bailout would have only deferred the inevitable for maybe another month. That'll give you an idea of how bad those numbers are and how bad Spirit was in terms of their shape. Not to mention, I mentioned the 550 for JetBlue. They weren't in great shape either. Remember, they collateralized 22 of their planes to get a $550 million loan to be able to continue to fly through the rest of 2026. That means, guess what? We don't know what's going to happen in 2027. JetBlue has already now retained financial advisors to at least explore the future sale of the airline, either as a sale, a merger, or whatever. The fact they're bringing in those financial advisors gives you an idea that they can look at the numbers as well. Now, who wants to buy them? Who wants to merge with them? Well, all bets are off right now because JetBlue, prior to the Iran war, had a debt already of $8 billion. And that means they were paying $600 million in interest every year just to service that debt. The fuel bill went up dramatically between February and now, which increased their debt load to nearly $9 billion, hence the need to collateralize those jets to get a loan just to keep operating. So who wants to take over JetBlue and assume all that debt? The answer, nobody. It'll be interesting to see what happens. Scott Kirby, who had established a sort of quasi-partnership with JetBlue to be able to get some gates in space at JFK so that United can get back into JFK, now says not interested in taking over JetBlue. He was interested in doing something with American, but that was folly. That was never going to happen. Too many overlapping routes, too many anti-competitive issues, even for the Trump administration to tolerate in their anti-regulatory mood. No one was going to handle that, let alone, least of whom would be Ed Bastian, the CEO of Delta. So the UA American thing, not going to fly. For the moment, the UA JetBlue thing, not going to fly. Where does that leave any other airlines for mergers and consolidations? Guess what? Get ready for Southwest. Southwest may be coming into the picture to look at JetBlue, and American may be coming into the picture to look at Alaska. So watch this space. We will be watching it as well. Some other interesting news I want to share with you about a different way of getting to your plane in certain airports around the country, which I actually think is a pretty good idea. If you happen to live in Rockford, Illinois, and you're flying American Airlines, you go to the airport in Rockford, you park your car, by the way, a whole lot cheaper than parking it at O'Hare, and you check your bags. If you're checking bags, you get your boarding pass, you go through security, but you don't go to a plane. You don't go to a jetway. You get on a bus, and that bus drives you to O'Hare. And what happens at O'Hare? No, you don't pull up at the curb and go through security again. You go onto the tarmac through a security gate, and the bus drives you to your plane. I'm liking this, right? And you're saving money on parking as well. That's what's happening in Rockford with American. Now on Delta and JetBlue in Boston, they're doing something else. They've come up with a remote check-in facility in Framingham, Mass. You go there, park your car at a whole lot less cost. Once again, check in, get your boarding pass, check your bags if you're checking bags, get on a bus. And it takes you right past security at Logan, and it takes you right to the gates, and off you go. You know what? I love these ideas. And when they work, they work. I remember there's a time in London where you'd go to a bus depot in central London, check in at either British Airways or in the old days, British Caledonian, check in your bags, and whether you're going to London's Heathrow or Gatwick, get on the bus, and guess what? You went to the airport. Same thing, you could even check it in and take the train to the airport. Now, you still had to go through security there, but the point is you did all your check-in before you ever got to the airport. That included your bag. So when you got off the train or the bus at Heathrow or Gatwick, you just went through security and went to your gate. When this works, it really works. So we hope that they'll be able to take this model and employ it at other choke point airports to make life just a little bit easier. Okay, speaking of bags, how many times have you gotten to the airport, gotten to your gate, and heard the announcement before you boarded that all the overhead bins are full, they're going to have to gate check your bags? Now, that's not why you brought the bag to the plane. You wanted to be able to get there and get off the plane. But you have no other choice, and they're going to gate check that bag. The airlines won't tell you this, but I will. The minute they gate check that bag, even if it's a small commuter flight, and they bring it back to you on the jetway after you land, you have all the rights of a completely official checked bag. And what that means is the airline's responsible for any damage, replacement, or reimbursement if they mess with the bag. What most people don't know, what the airlines won't volunteer with you, is that under current DOT rules, the liability cap per incident, not per bag, but per flight, per passenger, is about $4,700. Guess what? That's a lot of money. So if you're going to have a bag, even if it's your carry-on that becomes a checked bag, or you're checking a bag in general, make sure you, number one, take a photograph of everything that's in the bag that has value. Now, remember, they're not going to insure fur coats, negotiable securities, or cash. There are exclusions. But if you bought a new coat, not a fur coat, if you bought a new camera, but why would you pack a camera in your bag? But the point is, keep receipts for everything, photograph everything, because even if they have to pay out, and even though that cap is $4,700, remember, airlines pay based on depreciated value, not real value, or not actual replacement cost. They do it just on depreciated value. So keep those receipts. Okay, I'm having my own battle right now that's in the making with American Airlines. They lost my bag and my wife's bag on the way to Rome. And literally, the bag could never catch up to us because we were doing 4 other cities. So when the bag finally got to Rome, they had to hold it in Rome for 5 days. We had to go shopping because I've always wanted to say this, I had nothing to wear. So we'll see what happens with that $4,700 cap on that flight. And there's a difference, by the way, between a flight that goes from the United States to Rome and a flight that starts in Rome. different international conventions apply, and that 4,700 cap doesn't apply in Europe. It only applies to U.S. flights either within the U.S. or from the U.S., where the incident happens there, okay? So if you're on a flight, for example, from New York to Italy, and you're changing planes in London, right? And it's determined that they lost a bag from the flight from London to Italy, different convention applies. But if the bag never got on the plane in the US, there's that $4,700 cap. So remember that. Again, keep receipts, keep photos. You are going to need them. All right, let's go down and say hello to a couple of people. Linda's saying hi from Naples to another paradise. Here we are in Honolulu. Steps from Waikiki Beach, of course. Jim and Harriet, they came in number 2 today from Richmond, Virginia. Nice to see you guys. Tom says, great talking to you last week about my oncoming trip to Africa. You will be pleased to know that I did add the elephant safari to my trip. Okay, let me know how that works. Somebody's saying, Sawadee from Thailand. Jeffrey's saying, would flights from Honolulu to Tahiti or Chicago to Kona be affected by the loss of customs and border protection? Honolulu to Tahiti? Yeah, you're going to another country. Chicago to Kona? No. Here's a news bulletin. Kona is in the United States, right? You know, would you believe, with all due respect, 7% of the American public, according to the most recent research, think you need a passport to come to Hawaii from the mainland? No, they became a state in 1959, okay? And that's where I am right now. So I'm not going through customs or border patrol protection, or border protection, I should say, when I leave Honolulu later today. But if I'm going from Honolulu to Tahiti, yeah, I better show my passport, and I have to clear customs in Honolulu when I come back from Tahiti, right? Tahiti, by the way, is not in the United States. So now you know. Okay. Tom wants to know any updates on my miles and rewards special that we're planning on doing. We're still in the process of doing the research on that and producing it. With any luck at all, it'll be on the air later this year. Robin says, aloha from Williamsburg. Okay. Jeff is saying, I'll be in Berlin next week. Do you also recommend a trip to Potsdam? I do, but I'll tell you something else, Jeff. If you're going to be in Berlin next week, if the weather's good, take a little boat cruise along the river there. It's amazing. The other thing I want you to do, one of my favorite department stores in the world is in Berlin. It's called KaDeWe. It's about 7 or 8 stories tall. And what's coolest about that place is whether or not you buy stuff or not, go to the upper floors. Those are the food halls. I mean, unreal. That's where you want to eat, in KaDeWe. And you'll bring stuff back to your hotel as well. Check it out. Okay. Colleen is saying, at LAX getting ready for takeoff. Where are you going, Colleen? Tom is saying, how much, if any, do airlines lose on missing bags? Are you asking, Tom, how many bags do they actually lose, or how much money do they spend every year on missing bags? Be a little more clear. I'll try to help you. All right. Oh, Anthony was nice enough to post this. I mentioned Hidden Malta, right? Delta serving Malta this week for the first time ever, nonstop service from the U.S. Any airline's first-time service from the U.S. to Malta. Check out Hidden Malta. That's our 1-hour special. It premiered, of course, on PBS. And, of course, you can watch it on Amazon, Apple TV, and YouTube. All right. Tom says, is there a way to keep from getting bumped from a flight? Well, there's one way you can mitigate those chances. Next time you get a boarding pass, you know what you see on your boarding pass, right? You see your flight number, the gate, maybe your frequent flyer designation, whether or not you have TSA pre-check, all those things, right? The boarding time. But look carefully on the boarding pass to see something else. 3 digits. It's called an SEQ. That's airline jargon short for sequence. That's the number the airline gives you based on the actual time you physically checked in for the flight when they issued your boarding pass. So they use that sequence number to figure out who's first in line to get bumped if nobody volunteers. That's as simple as that. So, you know, the fact that you have a reservation and a boarding pass or a seat number doesn't mean you've officially checked in. You check in to get the lowest number or a sequence that you can. The higher the number, guess what? The likelier the chance you're going to get bumped. Okay. Melanie says, hi from windy London. but it's 30 degrees cooler than it was last week. Okay. Mary Louise is saying hello from Tempe, Arizona. All right. And Camilla is saying aloha from Torrey Pines in La Jolla. Yeah, we just we did our radio show from the lodge there at Torrey Pines not too long ago. We love it. I want to share with you a video. We try to do this every week. A little flashback to the past on airlines. Delta Airlines still operates this aircraft. So does United, but American no longer does. They've been parked for quite some time. But this is how American Airlines announced at the beginning their brand new aircraft, otherwise known as the Boeing 767.
Introducing the American Airlines 767.
Our new plane. You know, I still can't get over all this space.
Almost every passenger gets a window or an aisle seat, plus loads of carry-on room.
Now this is an airplane pilots dream about.
Welcome aboard.
Come share the excitement of our new 767s with us soon.
And that 767, both the 200 model and the 300 model, American has retired those. I used to live on that plane, going between LA and New York for the Today Show, flew American all the time. And when they retired the 76200, you know what? Somebody at American liked me, and they sent me my business class seats. They're in my office in New York. So I sit there all the time and make believe I'm eating airline food. Anyway, so much for the 76. But if you still want to fly the 76, Delta still flies it, and so does United. So there you go. Also, a little programming note, we have just started season 11 of The Travel Detective. And here's a little peek. This week on The Travel Detective, I'm going to tell you the story of an airline that most of you have never heard about, and very few of you will even get to fly. But it's definitely an airline you need to know about. That's our cover story. Plus, it was once the playground of celebrities, like Charlie Chaplin and John Wayne. Today, it's a special island getaway for everybody else, just a boat ride away from Southern California. I'll show you how to live like a local on Catalina Island. And then, it's a century-old property in West Central Florida with grand architecture and some great stories to tell, starting with its improbable comeback. Our correspondent, Carrie Sanders, checks you in to the Vinoy Resort, a true hotel with a past. I'm Peter Greenberg. All this and more on the next edition of The Travel Detective on PBS. Check your local listings. There you have it. By the way, another blast from the past, and it's amazing how things change and how things don't change. I love George Carlin. I think he's genius. I can't get enough of his old clips. But here's one from 1992, which will make you laugh again and again and again to let you realize when you see his stand-up on airlines, how much hasn't changed at all. George Carlin from 1992.
They might tell you you're on a non-stop flight. Well, I don't think I care for that. No, I insist that my flights stop. Preferably at an airport. It's those sudden, unscheduled cornfield and housing development stops that seem to interrupt the flow of my day. Here's one they just made up. Near miss. When two planes almost collide, they call it a near miss. It's a near hit. A collision is a near miss. Look, they nearly missed. Yes, but not quite. They might tell you your flight has been delayed because of a change of equipment. Broken plane. Tell me to put my seat back forward. Well, I don't bend that way. If I could put my seat back forward, I'd be in porno movies. Then they mentioned carry-on luggage. First time I heard carry-on, I thought they were going to bring a dead deer on board. I thought, what the hell do they mean with that? Don't they have the little TV dinners anymore? Then I thought, carry on, there's going to be a party. People are going to be carrying on the plane. Well, I don't care for that. I like a serious attitude on the plane, especially on the flight deck, which is the latest euphemism for cockpit. Can't imagine why they wouldn't want to use a lovely word like cockpit, can you? Especially with all those stewardesses going in and out of it all the time. There's a word that's changed, stewardess. First it was hostess, then stewardess, now it's flight attendant. You know what I call them? The lady on the plane. Sometimes it's a man on the plane now. That's good, equality. I'm all in favor of that. Sometimes they actually refer to these people as uniformed crew members. Uniformed. As opposed to that guy sitting next to you in the Grateful Dead t-shirt and the fuck you hat.
I had to do it. Sorry. George Carlin from 1992. Anything changed in the last 34 years? No. I guess that's what makes flying fun. All right, let's go to some other questions here that people have sent in. Here's one from Barb's who writes, would I recommend venturing to Europe in the next 1 to 12 months given political climate? I have no idea what you're meaning. I'd go to Europe tomorrow. Remember, it's not about the political climate. It's not about the climate. It's about situational awareness, understanding what makes sense to you, what makes sense on the ground. How many of you read U.S. State Department advisories? Have you ever read one completely? All right, I have issues with State Department advisories. I think most of them are misleading, inaccurate, even if they're well-intentioned. But I still recommend reading them in full, but not in a vacuum. Also read the British Foreign Office advisories that they send to their citizens, easily accessible online. And then number 3, with very few exceptions, there are English language newspapers, either dailies or weeklies, that are published in so many destinations around the world, accessible online. Read the last 30 days of issue, and guess what? You'll be able to make an intelligent, informed decision as to whether or not you're going to go or where you're going to go. That's how you do it. Now, here's one from Terry. I booked a safari for September in Tanzania. After reading the latest news regarding the Ebola outbreak in Uganda and the Congo, I am not interested in risking my life for a safari. The head of the African CDC has declared the 10 African countries as at risk. The safari company refuses to refund the $6,000 deposit. I have insurance, but I'm not sure it will help. Well, let's talk about the words at risk. I'm at risk going to Newark. I worry about getting hit by the Madison Avenue bus. There are different risk categories, aren't there? Right now, I would have no problem going to Uganda. I would have no problem going to Tanzania. I might have a problem under other circumstances as well going to Uganda or South Sudan, simply because the health infrastructure there is really not set up for much of anything. But I just came back recently from Uganda, no problem. It's all a matter of your own personal health, your own condition. Consult your doctor, realize what you can travel with and what you can't travel with. And right now, when you take a look at what's going on over there, even you haven't mentioned Kenya as well, they're able to, at this point, treat everybody in Uganda right now. It's not considered yet an outbreak, but they're concerned about it. I won't kid you. Same thing in Kenya. And the real question is, what lessons have we learned from COVID in terms of how this gets spread, since you can easily contract it? Well, what they're doing, and I think this is an appropriate approach, is they're restricting the flow of any passenger coming to the United States from any of those affected areas into only one airport. In this case, it would be Washington Dulles, where they have the appropriate screening and testing facilities right there. So they're not all going to 55 different airports and they can't trace them. All right. But from now, the reason why your safari company hasn't refunded your deposit is because Tanzania is open. It is not closed. It has not been declared a health emergency in Tanzania. Keep in mind, when it comes to travel insurance, remember, You want to buy travel insurance because you want to be protected against, known events, right? In a situation like this, even with weather, people buy travel insurance. Oh, it's raining. I want to use my insurance. There's no rain insurance. What happens is if the airports close and the country's not operating any air service, that's when your insurance kicks in. If it's declared a national or international health emergency and there are rules that you cannot enter or leave the country, basically it's closed, that's when insurance kicks in. That's why you're not getting your deposit back right now, because there are people going on safari in Tanzania and having a great time. So I'm not telling you to be cavalier. I'm not telling you to be irresponsible. I'm just letting you know what is working and what isn't working and what you need to do to protect yourself if you want to go. Okay? Here's one from Pratt, who says, I flew in and out of O'Hare to Houston this past holiday weekend and have never seen so many people traveling, and the high fares are not stopping, flyers and every plane jammed full. That's what I was talking about. The reason why the planes were full, people made their reservations 4 and 5 months ago. The real key is to check out the forward-looking projections of the airlines in terms of their reservations for the July 4th holiday, for Labor Day holiday, and the rest of the summer, and you're going to see weakness and softness in those reservations numbers, right? I'm in Hawaii right now. I'm flying back to New York tonight. There are a lot of empty seats on the plane, all right? And there are a lot of empty seats coming in. Now, that's just the name of the game right now, right? Demand being driven by cost or being affected by cost. And there you have it. All right. Now, one other thing I want to talk to you about. Of course, it's our photo of the week. Let's take a look at it. Theodora Reyes. She took this photograph in Monte Carlo, and she writes, the sculpture is titled La Main Division 3 by French artist Bernard Bazina, created in bronze in 2017. The giant cracked hand holding a delicate globe symbolizes the juxtaposition of strength and fragility. It is prominently placed on the west esplanade of the Opera de Monte Carlo, right by the waterfront and next to the famous Monte Carlo Casino. Anyway, nice shot, nice explanation. We appreciate the photo. And of course, if you think your photo qualifies as the photo of the week and you want it up there next to Theodora's, you know what to do. Send it to photocontest@petergreenberg.com, and we'll be glad to put it up there right next to that. All right, a few more little housekeeping notes before I get done. Jeffrey says Honolulu is not a sanctuary city. Would sanctuary cities without customs and border protection have an impact on international flights leaving Honolulu? Well, remember, what they're talking about, they haven't done it yet from the DHS, is to remove all customs and border protection officers from airports and international gateway cities that are also sanctuary cities. Honolulu, they're not focusing on. They're focusing on Portland, Oregon, LA, San Francisco, Boston, New York, Washington, D.C., and some others. That's a huge deal if they do that. It puts a stop to all flights. And by the way, if you're putting a stop to all international incoming and outgoing flights, you're messing with not just primary, but secondary and tertiary airline schedules, which means they're going to have to cancel other flights as well that may not have been affected by those other cities, but which may be still open and have customs and border protection officers. It's a mess waiting to happen. Again, it hasn't happened yet, but the DHS is rattling the cage saying the plans are in place and we should be prepared for it if they do it. Obviously, we'll be watching it carefully. Okay? Camilla says, Safari, when a circumstance does not kick off insurance coverage, the tour operator will often issue a credit if the situation becomes sufficiently dire. That is correct. That did happen in COVID. Camilla says, we're still in a wait and see mode. Hey, speaking of that, Daniel says hi from Tanzania. Okay, we love that. Chris is saying hello from Bellingham, Washington. What trip would you book right now if you knew you would lose access to it in 5 years? Ooh, well, life has no guarantees. Let me tell you something that's going to sound a little sentimental, but every time I go somewhere and every time I leave somewhere, I always turn around and take one look back because there is no guarantee I will ever see it again, right? There's nothing that guarantees me that. So later this afternoon, when I get on the plane to go from Honolulu to Chicago to New York, I'm going to appreciate where I am. I'm going to look around. And as we take off on the Reef runway later this afternoon, I'm going to look down over Hickam and over Pearl Harbor and over Diamond Head as we clear the airspace, and think only nice thoughts, because no guarantees I'm coming back. Of course, I want to come back, and so do you. So it's not a question of losing access to it, because I don't look at losing access the way you do, or at least the way I think you do. Losing access to me is not being able to fly anywhere. Like you're incapacitated, you're sick, or you're dead. But if you're talking about losing access to a location because of political situations or closures of borders, I'm a firm believer that that is not permanent, right? Think of all the borders that were closed or not available to us over the last 40 years that we can go now, right? We can go to Saudi Arabia now. We've always been able to go to Cuba, even though we thought the borders were closed, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So access is a relative term. Okay. And now, last but not least, a few more housekeeping notes. Oh, Yvette's saying hello from Las Vegas, New Mexico. We were there, we were pretty close to there a couple of weeks ago. We were doing our Route 66 television special, which will be premiering, by the way, in November. Speaking of things premiering, our radio show this Saturday, coming to you from Newport Beach, California, and the Lido House. Beautiful location, the site of the former Newport Beach City Hall. Some great history in Newport Beach going back to the 1700s, the Spanish colonial era, and of course leading into a natural harbor that allowed for a port and great shipping. The Pacific Electric Railway was there, and of course in the 1920s, Hollywood movie stars, and they're still there today. So check us out, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Check your local listings for Peter Greenberg Worldwide, coming to you from the Lido House in Newport Beach, California. That's this Saturday. In the meantime, obviously, we're watching the space on the airfares. We're watching the space on what's going on in the Straits of Hormuz. Remember this, guys. Even if they open the straits as I'm speaking, oil prices and gas prices won't stabilize for between 6 and 9 months, and no guarantee that they're going to come down in terms of what it's going to cost you at the pump. That's the crazy thing. But again, all the research indicating to us that Americans may deny themselves new clothing, new cars, new jewelry, maybe 2 or 3 nights out at a restaurant, but they're not going to deny themselves the opportunity to travel this summer. What we are going to be doing, apparently, is cutting down on the number of days, traveling closer to home, and spending less money. We'll be monitoring that as well. My thanks to Anthony Protus, who's also here in Honolulu helping us out with the boards. And of course, thanks to you for watching. I will see you next week for the next global travel update from the mainland, as they say, where no visa or passport is required. See you guys later.